Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I'm doing my second time doing a weekly wrap-up, which is fun. I'm actually really enjoying the weekly wrap-up because I was able to actually go over each book and not feel too stressed out. So I think I'm enjoying this weekly wrap-up. So this is my wrap-up for March 10th through the 16th. And we also had the Romance Takeover Readathon going on during this week. So quite a few of these books are from that readathon, which was great. It really pushed me to read faster and read more. So it was a great week. I read 10 books this week. So I feel like that was pretty good. I had a really productive week. And I think a lot of that has to do with the readathon. Like, it really pushed me. So, let's just go ahead and dive into my books that I read for this week. Okay, so the first book that I read wasn't great, and that was Until Retribution Burns. This is the third book in the Beauty and Lies series by Adelaide Forrest. The first book I really liked. I was very intrigued. Raphael is a very bad, or Rafe is a pretty bad, over the top. He's willing to do things like the guys in the Blondie series aren't even willing to do. So it was interesting. But the last book I didn't really like as much, but I thought, you know what, let's just keep going. I did have a viewer actually request a deep dive into Adelaide Forrest, so I thought, let's just finish the series because I needed to read more Adelaide Forrest. So I did read this one. And this is between Rafe and Issa, and Rafe basically had seen her when she was underage, was obsessed with her when he's been featured in the Blondie series, if you're familiar with that. And they basically told him, no, you can't take an underage girl. You need to wait for her to get of age. You need to be respectful and not be being a creep. So he waited till she was of age, had people involved in her life, set up this whole thing so she would be going out to their area, on a trip out to their, I can't remember where it was at in the first book. But anyways, he tries to woo her and stuff, and then basically he kind of kidnaps her and takes her home with him. He forces her to marry him in the second book. He has actually injected her with, I think, I can't remember what, a fertility drug kind of thing. And he's really trying to breed her and stuff. So in this, it kind of continues. There's a little bit more plot going on because we're finding out about Issa and what happened to her, because there was a mystery about how she was, when she was younger, her and her twin were thrown into the ocean or whatever, I think it was, and they almost drowned and died. And her twin hates her. Her twin is a little over the top villain to me, and it was just kind of annoying. But she finds out that Rafe's father was the one that had done that. And so we're looking into Rafe's father and how really crazy evil he is and all that kind of stuff. So, again, this was just kind of not doing it for me. It was a lot of that body betrayal where she's so angry and I'm going to stand up to Rafe, and he just basically can get her off and use her body, and then she forgives him and lets it go, and it's just annoying. And there's just a lot of stuff that I don't know, it just isn't working. It's just a little much. So I gave this one 3 stars. It is for chilies because it is very spicy, but there is the forced pregnancy, knife play, and there is forced skin carving. So he literally carves into the skin, so with a knife. So I don't know, it's a little much. I like the Blondie Syndicate a lot better than this, but I will still read the 4th book because that's the final book. I don't know why we needed to make this into 4 books, but whatever. So, and I did listen to that on Audible. It is available on Audible Plus if you're interested. I think all of them are. Then I read The Dawn by Serena Akeroyd, and I really had a great time with this one. This is connected. If you follow my channel, you've seen that I am trying to get through the 5 Points and her Saints MC series. I think it's Saints Sinners. whatever. And I'm reading her exact reading order. So the last book was like the 5 Points Mafia, and then now we're going into the Valentini family. So this is in the reading order, and this is a duet. So I only read the first book because I had to get the stuff on the Romance Readathon stuff first. But this is between, I think his name is Lucio. I may be saying that wrong. Sorry. And Jen. And I really loved it. Honestly, when I found out Jen was going to be the heroine, I didn't think I would like it, because if you've read Filthy by Serena Akeroyd, which is the very first book in the 5 Points Mafia series, she is like the best friend of the heroine in that book. And I always thought she was very vapid and two-dimensional and very like selfish and all about image. And I just thought she was kind of bitchy to Aoife. And so I didn't really think she was that good of a friend. So I didn't think I would like this at all. But Serena Akeroyd redeemed Jen for me. Like, I really loved her character. She is actually a gold digger. She's proud of it. She doesn't care. She isn't going to hide it. She's a gold digger. Her mother was a prostitute. And so she grew up kind of around her and her Johns, and her boyfriend would pimp her out. And so she just never wanted that life. And she wanted that better lifestyle. Thing about with Jen is that she's super smart too. So, I mean, she's gone to college. She's extremely intelligent. So she's not your typical like gold digger, if that makes sense. But her and Lucio, they like meet each other when she was out to dinner with Aoife and them. I think it was Aoife. It might have been the other friend. Because if you follow the 5 Points Mafia, she is best friends with, I'm trying to remember her name, if it was Savannah. I think I'm getting the wrong name. I'm sorry, you guys. But it was of the last relationship in the 5 Points Mafia, Aiden Jr.'s woman. And they're like best friends. But that woman was a reporter, and she had been kind of going after a story with the 5 Points Mafia. And she had been kind of investigating Jen, and she wanted to get close to her. Because of reasons I don't want to give away with the 5 Points Mafia. But because of that, she kind of tells the truth to Jen, and like who her father really is and all this stuff, and how that's how they became friends. And Jen feels very betrayed. So she ends up meeting Lucio like one night when they were all at dinner, and they're like instantly interested. And they kind of have a great go out and have a good night together at his, like, he has a club and everything. But then when she goes to the bathroom, this woman, like, accosts her and tells her, like, you stay away from my husband. I'm his wife. And so she basically bounces out of there, leaves that situation, because she's not about, like, being with a married man. And then later when she, like, is having a hard time and finding out about who her father really is and her best friend's betrayal, she kind of needs an escape. So she goes to Lucio, and they have a one-night stand. And when I tell you this book starts off with a bang, it starts off with a bang. It literally starts off with them and their one-night stand. And things kind of go from there. He's become the Don of the Valentinis. He's basically had to get vengeance and revenge against people that tried to take, like all the Italian mafia that tried to take things from his father. And so he has kind of a tragic past. He's actually really smart and was going to school, but basically that all changed when his father was killed and everything. So he's got a lot going on with his mafia, and he's very into Jen. He's never really done relationships, but he basically pursues her pretty hard, and they start to kind of have a relationship. She is doesn't really like have sex vaginally. She's only done anal with guys. So that was an interesting twist to this. I've never read that in a book, but she didn't want that intimacy because of everything that she went through with her mom and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of action. There's really great sexual chemistry. It leaves off on a cliffhanger, but it wasn't like too bad of a cliffhanger, but it's good. And I really loved their even though they got sexual pretty quick at that beginning, it was kind of like a slow build to them like opening up to each other, and her like trusting him and wanting a relationship with him. And so I just really loved it. I think it was great. So I gave this one 5 stars and 4 chilies because the spice is there. Okay, next book I read was To Love Jason Thorne. I've seen a lot of people talk about these books, and I kind of put it off because I'm not really into like the cutesy romantic comedy kind of books. But I thought I would give this one a shot. And this is actually available on Audible Plus, so I listened to this on Audible. And this is by Ella Maise. This is the first book in the Love and Hate series, and I am interested in reading the second book. This is between Jason and Olive. And Olive basically has had a crush on Jason since she was a kid. He moved in next door, and he was her brother's best friend. And she just had stars in her eyes for him forever. And like he ends up losing his parents, I believe. I can't remember what happened already. But something happens where like he has to move to another state. I think to go live with his dad or something like that. And so he ends up moving, but like his family life wasn't great. So he was like more part of their family, and he was over there all the time. And he really liked her. He thought, like, but he like she was a kid, you know, so he didn't really, and she was younger than him, so he didn't really look at her like that. But when he leaves, she's like devastated. They did have an interaction where she got somebody else's phone and was trying to text him to like talk to him as somebody else, and then like she got a text from him saying like, oh, well, no, she's just the little sister. She's like, you know, clingy and whatever. And so she was like all brokenhearted little young teen girl. So he ends up moving away, and it's like, I think it might be like 10 years later. It's a pretty big time jump. And he is a Hollywood heartthrob actor, and she wrote a book that's a huge hit, and they're trying to make it into a movie and a movie deal. And then who walks in during the meeting for this is Jason Thorne. They want to sign him on for the lead. And so now she's like, and she kind of wrote this book about him basically. And so now they're kind of, you know, seeing each other, like not seeing each other, but they're like kind of running into each other, working together a little bit on this. And he has actually gotten caught with like a sex video, having sex in public. His just reputation is a mess. So his people want him to do like a wedding, a marriage, a fake marriage. And they basically see, like the paparazzi see him and her out one time. And then like that she was like his best friend's sister. And they love the story. So they're like, you guys should marry. So they end up doing like this marriage of convenience. And this was okay, you guys. I just have a really hard time with the pining heroine. It felt very one-sided. She's been obsessed with him for years, and then now all of a sudden he notices her, and it just felt like too insta-lust for me. Like he was just lusty for her. I didn't feel like a romantic connection, and then we're supposed to believe the love when it's like he didn't even really notice her like that before. So that's why I have a hard time with like the pining heroine, especially from like childhood. It just doesn't always relate. I did love her best friend, and then I think that's who the next book is going to be about. So I'm interested to watch that one. So I ended up getting this one 3.5 stars and 2.5 chilies. Okay, so the next book was Wishe Unravels, which was our buddy read for March. We actually just did the live show today, so I will try to link that below if you want to watch our thoughts on Wishe Unravels. But this is by Gabrielle Sands, and this is the first book. Oh, I didn't write the name of the series. Sorry, I forgot to write it down here. I'm trying to remember what it was called, but anyways, this is the first book. And this is a new to me author, and I had a great time with this. I'm so happy we picked this book. I really want to continue and finish like with the series, but I had a lot to do with my TBR and stuff, so I couldn't just go right into the second book. But this is between Damiano De Rossi and Valentina. And this is such a unique setup for a mafia romance. I read a lot of mafia, and this one just felt very unique because Valentina has basically been, you know, an arranged marriage to this psycho. He's crazy. He basically like mentally tortures her because what he does is he brings people back that he would usually have to torture or get information out of or kill, and he makes her do things to them and torture them and hurt them and all that. So she's like living a pretty traumatized life. One day he brings home this really young girl and she just can't do it. She doesn't want to do it anymore, and the girl's like begging her to help her. He goes away for a little bit, so she ends up getting like the gun and helping the girl and shooting him. She thinks she kills him, and they go on the run. She has to go on the run because of this. This is her dad's, like, her dad is like the Don, and this guy's the right-hand man. So she'll be in huge trouble. So she helps the girl get on a plane. They end up having to take the same plane, but they might go, like, they're going to get off. She gets off, and she decides to go to Ibiza. And so she goes to Ibiza, and she gets robbed. And things just aren't going well. So she has got, like, no money, nothing. She can't, like, use her passport or anything because of her name, and she's in hiding. So she finds this club, and she tries to get a job there. And that's Damiano's club, and he basically is like, no, I already hired everybody. But he's very taken with her immediately because she's very beautiful. And she basically begs, like, I will work so hard. Give me, like, a week. Give me a week to prove myself, and then, you know, you can hire me. I'll work harder than anybody. And he agrees to it, and she does. She works her ass off, and he's actually kind of impressed. He took her as, like, the rich girl trying to get away from her parents, and really she's got grit. She's a survivor. She's so strong. But she's dealing with so many demons from, like, what she had to do with her husband, and, like, the guilt she feels. Like, she's a horrible human being for doing that because she would kind of have to cut off her emotions to be able to do those things. And so she just feels like there's violence in her. So it's very interesting. So they start to have, like, this insane connection, and they start to kind of fall for each other. So, I mean, I can't go further into anything because it'll give things away, but I really loved it. I love the setting of Ibiza. She thinks he's just this millionaire, billionaire, like, club owner, but he's part of the mafia, and he basically runs everything on Ibiza. And he's trying to get his, like, the seat as the Don back that is rightfully his. So there's a whole mafia storyline going on there. So I absolutely love this. I gave it 5 stars. And I think 3 chilies. So I'd highly recommend. Okay, so the next book I read, this one was The Pack by Kristin Coley. I am trying to read some new authors this year. That's one of my goals. And I saw this on Audible Plus, and I never read this author. And I thought, let's give it a go. I haven't read, like, a paranormal in a forever. This is a shifter romance. And let me tell you, it's YA, so it's pretty young. I wasn't really aware of that because the cover's kind of deceiving. But I didn't mind it. So there's not really any spice in this. But I think it's like a perfect YA shifter kind of romance. And in this, we have Jess and Dom. Jess is going to, I believe it's, so she's going to a small town in Banks, Idaho to finish out her last year. And she's a senior in high school, but she is, like, just turned 18. And she's going to live with her dad there because she doesn't want to be with her mom anymore. And she's moved out there. She's had some interesting interactions with kind of like this group. They're called the Pack at the school, and they are a pack because they're a bunch of shifters. And I think some don't shift, but they have the gene. I don't know. It was like a weird thing. But one of them is actually kind of like a coach at the school, but he's not that much older than them. So it's not like a super age gap or it didn't feel inappropriate or anything. But, like, they kind of have first, like, a weird animosity kind of thing when they first meet. But that quickly goes away. She ends up being, like, having to, like, walk home. And this one truck of guys, like, all of a sudden, like, stops. And they're, like, saying about her scent. and they start to like chase her down, and she has to like run for her life, and Dom helps her. And then so obviously we kind of find out that these guys are shifters, and then we have these other guys from like the nearby town that are like their enemies, and they're trying to like force women to like breed with them, because there are like, it's really rare, but there are humans that can like be good breeders, like be able to have a shifter's baby. Anyways, it was interesting. I'm definitely going to try and finish the series and try it out. It felt very Twilight to me, but like just all shifters, no vampires. It really reminded me of Twilight a lot. Like there was one part where he like took her on his back when they were like running, and like starts running with her through the woods, and it just really reminded me of Twilight. So I enjoyed it. The audiobook I got through like really quickly within like the same day, and I will probably continue with the series on that one. So it was interesting, and I think it set up an interesting world. So I'm definitely going to continue. And so I gave that one 4 stars, and I really didn't know what to give Chili's, because there is kind of like that sexual chemistry, but I think really there's only like some kissing and some biting, if you know what I mean. So I think I gave it like 1 chili or 1.5. I don't know. It's not a lot of spice, but I had a good time with it. Okay, so then I went on to a historical romance. This was the first book that I started for the Romance Takeover Readathon, and this basically hit my historical romance, audiobook, and next in series prompts for the bingo board. And this is Wicked in Her Arms by Stacy Reid. I read Accidentally Compromising the Duke previously on last week's one, and I loved it, so I thought let's just continue with that series. And this is between Tobias and Olivia. And this is kind of interesting because Olivia's father had actually killed himself. He had a mistress, and when she kind of like spurned him or whatever, he had a lot of gambling debts and everything, and he ended up killing himself, which ended up making things really tough on her and her mother. And so she's always wanted to kind of make her own way. She was a painter. She would sell her own paintings. She wants to be financially independent because of what happened to her mother. Her mother did marrying a nice man. So her stepfather is like a father figure to her, and he's like not doing well in the beginning of this, like almost at death's door, really sick. And so his like dying wish is that she needs to get, she needs to get married and set up. She doesn't want to get married. She just wants to do her own thing because she doesn't really trust that with everything that happened with her father. And then you have the added complication of her like stepbrother. He's going to be the one kind of in power when this father dies, with like what money they get and everything. And he's basically had his eye on her, and he wants her to be his mistress. And he kind of makes advances on her, and she's really traumatized by that. She's a really great character. She's very feisty. She is not a pushover. She fights back. But she basically ends up kind of going to stay with this woman because her parents are trying to get her back in to find a match and all of that. So she needs to get back out like in the season and all that stuff because she wasn't doing that. And so she goes to stay with this woman, and it ends up being Tobias's mother, and she's supposed to be kind of like helping her, with her, how she is as a lady and all these type of things and what you're supposed to do because she's pretty wild. And he ends up being there, and they kind of have these run-ons. They kind of like have this crazy banter. He can't handle her because he's very controlled and regimented, and she's like literally like they run into each other. She's like going super fast on a horse astride. She's not doing side saddles. She can fence. She does all these crazy things. So he's like insanely attracted to her too, but he does not want to ever fall in love or any of that. That hero. And so like he ends up having this mistress, and she shows up at the party where she wasn't supposed to come to this party, and she tells him to come looking for her, and Olivia sees him go in this room, so she's like curious about what's going on. So she kind of knocks, opens, and he pulls her in, and it's not his mistress, but they start getting pretty frisky in there, and they full on get it on in there, and they get caught. So now they're caught in a compromising position, just kind of like the last book was, another one of those. And so they need to get married. And she doesn't really want to, but once they get married, she's like, really wants to make the best of it. So this is like a clash of wills because she is a very fiery, independent, you know, strong woman. And he feels like he has to have everything controlled and he doesn't want to fall in love. And, you know, they're going to butt heads. So complications happen. There is like a third act breakup in this. But the thing, like, I wasn't fully on board with this hero a lot of the book. I think he was kind of an asshole and like didn't listen to her, even though she could have communicated things better with the drama that goes on. But I did like him at the end because he makes a really big grand gesture and kind of like grovels to get his woman back. And I really loved it. So I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars and 3 chilies. I just love Stacy Reid. I think she's like the perfect author to like get into if you're not like a full historical romance reader. I think she writes really fun, sweet, and spicy romances, and I just love her. Okay, so then I got to a dark romance. This is part of my 12 Recs for 12 Friends. So I read That Sick Love by Jescie Hall. I've seen this everywhere. I've seen Jescie Hall like everywhere. And so I was excited that actually I got 2 Recs on my 12 Recs from 12 Friends. I put that on Instagram. And I got like 2 of that author. So this one is That Sick Love. I actually got this recommended to me by @ReadWithMeDarling. She's a great follow on Instagram. And so I was intrigued. I was nervous to read this because everybody was comparing it to Haunting Adeline. And if you follow me or have seen my videos or seen my most hated books, I hated Haunting Adeline. I DNF'd it twice. I tried to read it twice. I hated it twice. I hated the writing. I hated Zaid. I do not get the hype over Zaid. And I know I'm in the minority here, but I've read way better writing than that type of book. So I was really worried when people were like comparing it to that. But then I saw a lot of people bashing it because he's not as good as Zaid and he's different than Zaid. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll like it. So I went in with an open mind, but I was worried. So this is between Arrow and Brioni. I think that's how you say her name. And this is a stalker, dark romance. It does kind of involve, it involves a religious cult. Brioni is involved in this. She's been raised in it, and she's kind of set up to do a leadership role, but she'd be the first female to be in this like leadership role in this cult or this religion. And not many people are happy about that. A lot of the men and the old school higher up men in this, they're not really wanting her to come to power. And she also happens to have a stalker, which is Arrow, and he is stalking her, but his reasons for his obsession with her were a lot more, I don't know, feasible. They made sense to me. And there was more of a backstory of what his purpose was than I felt like Zaid had. I mean, I didn't make it all the way through Haunting Adeline, so I can't really say for sure. But I did find him intriguing. He will always wear like a mask, or he'll have like a charcoal painted like skull on his face. And he'll like show up in her house. He watches her sleep. He sends her like a rose every day. And he'll take, the thing that I think people will have a hard time with this book is it does take a lot of religious stuff. And it's like sacrilegious. Like, you know, it's pretty bad with some of the stuff. It pushes boundaries for sure. So if you're not comfortable with that, like if you didn't like priest, you're really not going to like this, because this takes it to like a whole other level. So I didn't mind those things. I'm not super religious. So, but reading it, I was like, ooh, this might be kind of hard for some people, but it didn't bother me. He basically is stalking her, but he's also trying to help her. He's also been hired to kill her but he's also obsessed with her and helping her because they are basically trying to get rid of her. And he's doing whatever it takes to protect her, and he wants to free her and bring her to the light of like not being about this God and religion and all this stuff that she's fallen for. And she's like pure and hasn't had sex. And so he's basically showing her the truth of how fucked up this cult is, and then exposing her to like sex and all the goodies. So I didn't love this book, but I enjoyed it. I would have enjoyed it a lot more if it wasn't as long as it was. It was like about 500 pages, and it could have been cut like 150 pages shorter just by taking out a bunch of sex scenes. And this was my main issue with it, was it was just pushing so much dark, kinky sex that like every single chapter was dark sex. Oh, another chapter of dark sex. Oh, now we're pushing it again with more sex. Like I can say it was 80% smut and like 20% story. So like I'm getting bored. I'm getting bored of reading another sex scene. Oh, here we go with the sex scene. Even the epilogue, I'm like, oh my God, we're going to do another long epilogue where it's like a 20-minute epilogue and it's like sex scenes. I mean, like you don't need that much sex. I get it. It's going to get the hype. It's going to get the clicks. It's going to get the attention. But I need to care about the characters and feel their connection. And I get this. You are building a connection through sex. So I do get that. But I mean, tone it down. We do not need to write long books and overdraw out these books. I see it so much now with authors that it's like you could have had a 350-page book and it would have been a 5-star for me. Because while I did not like Haunting Adeline, I didn't like it a lot because of the writing. I thought the writing was horrible. Jessie's writing I actually really liked. So I ended up giving this, it was like a 3.5, but I rounded it to 4 because it was my first time author for me. And I did think there was some amazing scenes in here. It was unique. It was a little bit interesting. So I did like the characters. So, you know, if it would have been 350, cut out half those sex scenes, it probably would have been a 5-star read for me because I did enjoy it, but it dragged on. So I was starting to get bored and like I just wanted to get to my next book, and that's never a good thing. So, but let me just tell you, if you are looking for a kinky time, this is the book for you. I have so many kinks listed here, and this is just part of it. So into this, you're going to get some kinky sex. So we have degradation, which if you know me, I don't like degradation. So I wasn't really happy about that. But he does praise her sometimes. So that kind of balanced it out a little bit. We have blood play, breath play, primal play, knife play, anal, spitting, somnophilia. And then I'm a scene where I had to look it up because I was like, I know there's a term for this. I hope I don't get flagged on YouTube for saying this. But snowballing. If you know what that is, that's in here. So, I mean, and that's just touching the surface. It is kinky, people. It's a spicy read. So I am really interested to read the next one that I have because the other recommendation was from Bookmarked by Jen, and that was for Hawk. And so I'm excited to go into that one. So it'll be maybe a little bit different than this, like, you know, stalker romance thing. So definitely interested. And, you know, I mean, if you're up to that, check it out. Okay, so then I read a novella. This is The Best Man by Sam Mariano. This hit some prompts for the readathon as well. And so this is quite a ride. It's very short. She released it through like Kindle Vella or whatever originally, and then now she has it as like the full like novella. And I had a great time. It's Sam Mariano. She has a whole author's note in the beginning that kind of always cracks me up, her author's notes. But this is taboo. It's kinky. It's very quick. Like I flew through this in like one setting. I couldn't put it down. I really liked it. It's not going to be for everybody. I don't even have the characters' names here, but the heroine is basically getting married. And she ends up going to her fiance's place to crash. She didn't expect her to come that night because it was like her bachelorette party and ended up being really lame. So she went over there to like crash in his bedroom. And they kind of come home from the bachelor party, and his older brother, who was always like really mean to her, comes in the room, and he was like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he was like, "Oh, well, you know what you should do? You should like give him one night of like kinky, like kind of stranger sex thing." Like he basically put a gag on her. And basically she had, that guy's room had like those blackout curtains, so it was pitch dark in there. And he's like, "I'm going to send him in here with you, and, you know, you guys can have a good night." So, and he comes, but he brings like the dad. Then they have it go at it. Then I think 2 or 3 of the brothers. It's like a whole family affair. He's getting involved. There's DP going on. But during this sexual interaction, she's like feeling so connected to him, and he's like praising her, and he's so attentive, and she doesn't get it because she thought he always hated her. And then of course at the very end, he brings in the fiance, who is like freaks out. And then things play out from there. So I actually really liked it. It was so over the top, unbelievable, but I had a good time with it. And I was getting very big Mateo and Mia vibes from these two, because she is like super submissive to him and he's very manipulative, but like that alpha personality who would kill for his woman. And he's been basically pining for her. So I liked it. I gave it 5 stars and 5 chilies. It is spicy. There's a lot of sex going on. I think it's like only 140 something pages too. So then I read Goodbye Paradise by Serena Bowen. I actually listened to this on Audible Plus, and this is such a sweet male-male romance. I've been loving male-male romance, and I know Serena Bowen writes a lot of really good ones. So this is actually between Josh and Caleb, and they grew up in a cult. And Josh actually kind of gets in trouble. He's always like feels like he's inferior. He's not as strong as the other guys. And Caleb's like his best friend, but he's also been in love with Caleb, and he knows he like loves him, and nobody can really know because they're cult and everything. But he ends up getting in trouble where they're going to kick him out of the cult and drop him off, you know, kind of like they do. And Caleb kind of knew this was going to happen too. So he basically told him, "Meet me at this bus station." He goes off. He ends up escaping to go be with Josh. And they kind of go on this like hitchhiking journey because they have like no money. And to go to one of their old friends who she actually got out, and she's married and pregnant now. And so she's really happy to hear from them and wants them to come live with her. And so you have this like really cute sexual awakening too, because like Josh thought he was pining for Caleb, and Caleb would never think that way, but Caleb's actually been in love with him too. And so they start to kind of discover that. But there's also that hang up of like Josh being like in a cult and them drilling that it's wrong in their heads for so long. And so he's kind of questionable about it. And they do kind of want to keep it secret because they're staying with their friend, and they don't want, you know, her to be upset and like not have them stay with her. But it was just very sweet. These two loved each other so much. They were so beautiful together, and love watching them like find this sexual awakening, come out to the real world and discover like get a job and discover like a better purpose and be self-reliant, and just this journey that they go on. And I just really loved it. It was so sweet. It's just nice to read a ooey gooey male-male romance that just warms your heart. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars. And then I did give it 3.5 chilies. I don't know what it is, but male-male sex scenes are so hot. They always get me. But these ones were also really, really beautiful. Okay, so the last book that I read was Love Contract by Sophie Lark. And this was actually the last book for that readathon too. So This is between Sullivan and Theo, and this was really fun. I gotta say that the last two books by Sophie Lark were big disappointments for me. I didn't really like Minx. Grimstone was a big, like, I don't know. It was very, like, her last two books were very going into, like, erotic romance, and that's not what I'm here for with Sophie Lark. And it was very different from her Brutal Birthright and Kingmaker series, so it was just kind of a hard adjustment for me. And it was just like instantly lust and sex the whole book. And we do not have that in this one. And that's what I loved. This is a really slow burn, like a gradual, like connection that's building, that I felt their chemistry. I felt the love burning between them. But anyways, let's say what it's about. So, basically Theo works for this like super rich, kind of like, Elon Musk type of guy that wants to go to Mars and all this stuff. And he has his hands in a lot of different things. And she actually was going to school to be a chef. She actually applied for that, but he basically makes her his like personal assistant, and she basically does everything for him. He's been promising her that he's going to help her get a restaurant one day and blah, blah, blah. But he totally is like taking advantage of her. And Sullivan actually went to school with her. They knew each other in high school, but they barely kind of knew each other. She was kind of like the nerd. He was a super popular hot guy. And so they never really like interacted, but they definitely like knew about each other and were intrigued by each other. And he sees that she's his assistant and he needs to sell this land that he has. He's really hurting on cash. He's basically keeping this old mansion home that his father has. His mother was like a famous actress, and she had died, and the father just went into depression, drinking, and so he's kind of taking care of that. And he basically needs to get this land sold. He's really in bad straits, so he wants to sell it to this guy, but he needs interaction. He needs to get that contact with him. So he runs into her at this party, and he basically blackmails her. He kind of has something on her, and threatens her with that so that she would introduce him and then like fake date him so that he could keep kind of playing the long game, because this guy's very smart and he's not just gonna like hear your pitch and go for it. He kind of has to be manipulated or led kind of on it, like he basically Sully's gonna manipulate him to try and get him to want to take his land. So they kind of start fake dating, and you would think it'd be like, it's kind of sold as enemies to lovers, but that's like very little bit. Then she kind of has to stay with him at his place because her place is getting fumigated. So there's that forced proximity, and she loves like taking care of people and cooking for people. So she starts reaching out to the father and like cooking for him. And it was just, I loved it so much. They build like such a great friendship and get to know each other. And they kind of made like sign this contract about them not catching feelings, and that she could get like 10% of what he makes. So then she could get her own restaurant. And it was just really sweet. Like, honestly, the way they start falling for each other. And it took forever to get to the smut. And I freaking loved it, because by the time we get there, we're craving it. And these two have such great chemistry, and you just want them to be together. And it was just great. Like, I loved both of the characters. They were so amazing. So I really loved this. And I'm excited for this series because I think the next one might be his brother. And then I think the dad will get one too. So I really loved it. I don't know, like it was just so much better than the last two books. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars, and then I gave it 2.5 chilies, which I'm so happy about those 2.5 chilies. We didn't need all the smut. There was just a lot to appreciate in this book. It was beautiful. And I loved how Sullivan like knew so much about her when they were barely like being together, fake dating. Like he did, like he was so aware and like paid attention, and he knew things about her. And, you know, you could tell he was always intrigued by her. So I just loved it. Their chemistry was so beautiful, and their slow build relationship to when they finally like start to try and be together. I loved it. And I loved his brother and his dad. So I'm very excited to see what's to come with Sophie Lark, because this is giving me a lot of hope for this upcoming series, and I can't wait to continue. So those are the books that I read for this week. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these, your favorites, what you're looking forward to. Leave me a comment down below. And as always, please subscribe to my channel. I appreciate all you guys helping me build my channel. And I will see you on the next one.